It's the 30th episode of the WWJ Industry Connected Podcast, a monthly podcast devoted to the groundwater industry produced by the National Groundwater Association. I'm your host, Mike Price, and today we're joined by Rod and Sue Fogle of Fogle Pump and Supply Incorporated in Northeast Washington. We discuss the company's recent transition to an employee stock ownership plan, operating in its region, investing in its employees, and more. We welcome to the podcast Fogle Pump and Supply Incorporated in Northeast Washington. Founded in 1981 by Rod Fogle with a homemade pump truck, Fogle Pump and Supply has grown into one of the larger full-service water well companies with 4 locations serving rural communities across Northeast Washington. What makes the company's story especially unique is that its 60 employees recently became co-owners through an employee stock ownership plan, something still rare in the water well industry. What began as a one man with a homemade pump truck has grown into an employee-owned company built on hard work, determination, and a strong commitment to its employees and customers. Welcome, Rod, and your wife, Sue, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Good to be with you this morning.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We're happy to have you on to discuss the transition to employee ownership, the growth the company has seen in Northeast Washington, and why Fogle Pump and Supply believes investing in employees is helping shape the future of its company and the industry. So take me to the transition to the employee ownership and the origin of your company.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. As you mentioned in your opening statements, we started the company back in April of 1981. So we just celebrated 45 years here. And Sue and I bought a company in town called Bargain Warehouse, which was a small little plumbing shop. And they sold some logging supplies and plumbing parts and pieces. And they did do some pump work at the time. And they did have a homemade, built by the local high school metal shop pump truck. So that was the start of it. And at that point in my life, my working background, I was only 24 years old at the time, was in the water well business. Right out of high school, I went to work for a local well drilling contractor. I tried going to college, and truthfully, it just didn't work for me. I tried several colleges, and I just couldn't make it work. And I loved working in the well drilling field, which was ironic because my family was in the car business. I've been here all of my life in Colville, and my dad was here all of his life. And my grandpa started a car company in the 30s, and my dad had transitioned and taken that over. And I was being groomed to be in the car business. And unfortunately, my parents died in a plane crash when I was in school in 1974. So the car business went away with the death of my parents. And I ended up in the well drilling. Who would have ever thought what a difference between selling cars and drilling wells? So, 1981, we bought the pump store. Thankfully, the gentleman we bought it from, Harold Roeder, was looking to get out. And he was willing to carry contract because we didn't have any money. We were like most well drilling companies or any companies that start up from nothing. So he carried a contract for what we paid for the business. And my older sister actually lent me the money for a down payment. And thankfully, my wife had a job at the time working at the local hospital. We had just had a new baby in February of '81. So we were young and had a little family. And here my wife, Sue, thought, what in the world are you thinking about? I quit a job, a good paying job working for well drilling at the time to do this. So we had 3 people to start with, and it was a rough start. I missed the drilling side of it, and I got doing the pumps and stuff, but I really wanted the drilling side of it, and was able to lease our first drilling rig in October of 1981. So we'd only been here a few months, and an old CP 600, and was a CP guy through and through at that point. 18% interest. For those of you that have been around that long, you know that interest rates back then were sky high. And the payments on that, my wife thought, how in the world are we ever going to make this work? Well, I was, of course, doing the drilling at that time, and we had 2 other people in the store. And And it was hard. And every month, she asked if I could bring a paycheck home, and I said, no, I can't. I got to pay these other two guys. So finally, in 1984, was it that I convinced Sue that I needed her to come down to work with us because I suspected that some of our money that was coming through the front door wasn't getting to the proper
Getting to the
places.
bank.
So she left her job and came to work at the pump store, and that really was a life changer for us. So from that point, we started to show a little bit of profit, was able to get another rig, and at that point, I was running another CP 600, and we ended up finally growing over the years to a total. At one point, we had 10 rigs. Currently, we've got 8 with one plus a cable tool, 8 rotaries and one cable tool. And we grew our main branch here in Colville, and we added a branch in Republic next, which is a small community about 50 miles west of Colville. That slowly built into a reasonable addition to us. And then we, right out of Spokane, Washington, which is a bigger area for us, we put in an office in Airway Heights, which was our third location. And about 6-7 years ago, it's been
6 years
probably
ago.
6 years ago that we added our fourth location, which is Deer Park, which is another community partway between Colville and Spokane. And our son Robert is running that one, and then our daughter Elena is here in the business. So where we started wondering as we grew from 3 employees to 60 employees, and it was getting to be so much to handle. And those of you that are watching this know what it's like to try to be licensed and bonded and insured and all the different credentials you have to be in this industry. You look at your licensing for your people, you got to be CDL truck drivers. You got to, if you're doing mining work, which we do, you got to have MSHA. If you're doing any hazmat work, you got to have HazWalker. Then just the licensing for a Washington well drilling license and the Idaho well drilling licenses, all of those take time, apprenticeships, continuing education units, on and on and on. And then when you get into the pump side of it and your electrical and your plumbing and all that stuff, it's a lot. And to take and get a person licensed and trying to keep that person is tough. I think most of us in this business have seen people that you've grown within and they've got them all licensed. And then next thing you know, they think, well, man, I could do this on my own. And you're making all the money. And so that happens a fair amount. People leave, and the next thing you know, they've bought a pump truck or bought a drill rig and, started their own company. We really wanted to try to make it where people didn't ever want to leave our business. When they come and interview for a job, and I said, well, I want this to be your last job. I hope you never want to leave us. And we understand at the end of the day that you got to have money in your pocket to take home to mom and pay the bills and do all that stuff. So that's where this ESOP thing started coming up. And we, like a lot of you that are watching this, do a fair amount of business with Preferred Pump. And Preferred Pump, you may or may not know, a big supplier for us well drillers. They have gone to 100% employee-owned company. And we were being called on by some of their salespeople, Bob Otto specifically. And I was talking to Bob, and he really liked it from the employee side of it, saying, yeah, we're really happy, that we're owners in this company. And you could tell a difference in the way they handled themselves. This is for us. So I thought, well, that's awesome. So of course we knew Randy Lyon and know Randy, and Randy was the owner of the Preferred Pump, and we do some of the vendor trips that he sponsors every year. And I got a chance to visit with Randy, Sue and I, a little bit to say, well, from your perspective, and we're nothing compared to Randy as far as the size of our company, et cetera. But how did that work for you from the ownership? Was that a good thing? And he goes, I'm really, really happy with it. So I thought, well, that's a good endorsement. I've heard it from the employees. I've heard it from the owner. Randy suggested a company that specializes in ESOPs, and they're called Minke. They were out of California, so we had an initial phone call with Minke because the employee model the employee ownership model does not fit every company. There's a lot of T's to cross, I's to dot, the financing behind it and all that stuff. So we had our initial calls and answered their questions and supplied the information. And they came back and said, we think that would work in your company's example. And here's how it would work. There's a formula that you use based on your payroll that you pay out every year and what have you.
Okay.
So about 6 years ago, when we decided that we were going to do this, we started funding it. So the money is put into a trust by the company, into a trust for the employees. And even if you don't exercise and pull the trigger and formally sell the stock, that money is theirs. Once you've taken it and put it in their trust account, if you decide later that I don't want to do this employee thing, we're just going to keep the company, the 100% of the company, that money still goes to them. But in our case, we spent the 6 years, we talked about it with our daughter Elena and our son Robert that have come into the business. And we all agreed that we wanted to sell a portion of the company. So you have that choice. You don't have to go 100% employee owned. We chose to go 49% employee owned, leaving the 51% at some point when our final transition happens to the next generation, being our kids. They'll have the 51%, and they may or may not decide down the road to transition that into the employees. So as of April 30th of this year is when we pulled the trigger and closed on the ESOP and actually sold the stock. The money that was in the trust for the employees was used to buy the 49% from Sue and I. And again, there's a formula involved for the employee as to how much of it they get, et cetera, et cetera. Our thinking behind that is it's going to help keep our employees. They're going to take ownership in not only the equipment. We all know what this equipment costs, and we all want to keep it up and take care of it. And the customer, all of us know without a customer, we wouldn't have anything. But without an employee, we wouldn't have anything either. So at the end of the day, we need good employees and we need good customers. And we felt this was going to help accomplish both of those things.
Well, congratulations. What an accomplishment and a peace of mind, I'm sure, moving forward with the future of the company. Did you say 6 years it took?
Yeah, and that's not
researching.
That's not a requirement. You can do it at any point. Obviously, the longer you do it and the longer that you put money into that trust account, the less that you have to finance for the employees. Because of course the company has to be valued, and you actually have to have it valued from the owner's perspective, but then you also have to have another party come in and appraise the business for the employees to make sure that, as the owner, you didn't, throw out some bogus number. So it has to be done properly that way. And then if there's enough money in the trust account, of course, they can just cash out the stock. If there isn't enough, then the sellers, being Sue and I in this case, can carry a contract, and that's all negotiated through the ESOP people that you hire to represent your employees. So the longer you put the money in, the more money accumulates, the more opportunity you have to not have to carry a big contract. We could have done it after the first year, second year, whatever, but we wanted to do it long enough that basically put enough money to more or less cash out the employees.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, sharing the details of how it went. Sue, I know your daughter Elena was heavily involved in the process as well. But any practical takeaways from your perspective through the process that would be helpful for anyone in the industry considering an ESOP?
Well, I think you have to be more prepared for how expensive it ends up being. We didn't know what we didn't know. And so, we didn't know how much it was going to cost us, Fogle Pump, to make that transition. So the Menke Group, they are an expense. But when we got to the point of actually doing the sale, we had to hire a separate trustee and a separate appraiser person to look at the business and to represent the employees. And that was an expense that I don't think either one of us had anticipated. So it's a matter of really asking a lot of questions. And I don't think that there's any stupid question, because there were questions we didn't ask, but again, we didn't know what we didn't know. And it's very heavily regulated by the Department of Labor and the IRS. So there are a lot of things that you have to do and verify when it comes to payroll. Now, the Menke Group has support staff that helps you through all of that, which is a godsend, because it was way over my head. It's a very complicated process. And so you have to have professionals to help you. You have to have a good accountant to help you. So, and then when we got to the end of it, we also needed to have our own legal representation, which originally we thought that was part of what the Menke Group was going to do, but they wanted things reviewed by our own corporate counsel, which we really didn't have. So we just called on the local attorney who we had used for years for various things, and they stepped in and did what was needed from the corporate counsel point of view. So it is labor intensive, and it all happens after the first of the year, because you do the previous calendar year's payroll, and then you give them all this information on a spreadsheet, and they put it in their formulas and do everything. And then they come back and tell you the maximum amount that you can fund into the ESOP trust for the previous year. And you have to work closely with your accountants. So it is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot. But I think in the long run, if your company qualifies for something like this, I think it's very beneficial. Because like Rod said, one of the things that we wanted to do was provide stability for our company, for our employees, and for the communities that we serve. And this helps to do that.
Uh-huh. And have you noticed the pep in the step of your employees since April 30th?
Yeah. And one of the things that they did as a group, they kind of restructured the company, reorganized the company. And they have, I don't know what they're calling their team, but they have brought in a team of long-term employees, like an advisory team,
okay,
that are they review a lot more things. And it's not just Rod and I making decisions anymore. We're turning some of that over. And, this was a way also for us to figure out how to retire out of the company. And so they built teams, and they're doing a great job with all of those things. They're doing a lot of things that we never did, having weekly conference calls with the teams and the different staff, the different support staff. So everybody's on the same page, doing the same things, understanding all of the workings of the business. And they're going to also start having owner calls. I think they're going to just do that once a quarter, but even employees that no longer work for us, that are still quote unquote owners of the company, because they still have an investment in the company, because they made the investment, they were invested in the company.
uh-huh.
They're going to be included on the calls also, even though they don't work here anymore. They've retired out of the business, but just to update them on how the business is doing, where it's going, and what it's looking like for the future.
And one of the things with that, Mike, I might add, is that when you asked if we've noticed a difference, I think before we started the recording here, we mentioned about the Homestead Rescue Program, which is on the Discovery Channel. And our team, the kids, all got together with their management team to talk about this, because a local young couple was selected by this TV show to receive water on their property and do all this. Well, once they've done that, then they have to go out and find a contractor that's willing to step in and donate a well for the people to be featured on the TV show. So Sue and I really weren't that involved with it. And the team decided that it was worthwhile to them, and they chose to go ahead and donate. In fact, I was telling you that Marty, the lead guy from the TV show, was here this morning just finishing up, but we finished the well yesterday. The film crew's here. They're finishing filming tomorrow. They put the pump in last night. They're digging water lines today. So that's something that our team, being co-owners of it now, and like Elena sent out a company-wide email this morning, hey, we didn't make any money on this particular job, but I sure feel good about this and proud about this and stuff. So it's nice to see that from the crew and the people. They were all pretty giddy about it. I think they think they're famous.
And when will that air? Tell our viewers.
They're telling us that they think that'll air in October. So it'll be Homestead Rescue on the Discovery Channel sometime in October was when we'll be featured. And they've had a number of other well drillers, unbeknownst to me, because honestly, I hadn't seen the show. But they're based out of Alaska.
Now, though.
We've seen it now. We've seen it now.
Excellent. Well, boy, you've taken us through the growth of the company now, 4 locations. The growth you see in your area in Northeast Washington, can you touch on how that impacted the ESOP decision moving forward? Just the growth there in your region and the work you foresee?
Yeah, and it's really been a roller coaster ride. And I think most of us in this industry ride that same roller coaster. It's always fun when you go to the bank and you're looking to borrow money and they want you to forecast, this is what you did this year, how many wells are you going to drill next year, and that kind of thing. We all know if the phone doesn't ring, we're not going to sell a well. So, we've got the history of the company being 45 years old, and we kind of know what it is, but there's so many different things that can come up, like COVID, for an example. When we all went through COVID, nobody knew what that was going to do to our industry. In our case, it ended up being a boon to the industry, because what had happened is so many people could work from home, and they moved to our area of the world because they like to live here. So we had a huge influx of people that were buying properties and needing wells and stuff. So we were busier than we had ever been in all of our years. And I would have never, ever foreseen that. First, when COVID first happened, everybody's like, oh my God, the sky's falling. What are we going to do? And there was I'm sure all of us that went through it would have never believed we'd have gone through something like that. Well, since post-COVID now, business has got back more to normal. And as far as trying to speculate on the growth and everything, the area that we cover, the northern part of Idaho and all of Northeast Washington, it's fairly steady. It's not growing like it was. There was many years, we went through the really tough years in the early 80s and stuff. And then every year after that, we grew, and every year was our best year up until about 2007 and 8, when it really took a hit again. And that's when it really got rough for us here anyway. And we survived that, thankfully, because we've been in business a long time. And fortunately, Sue had done a good job of keeping some money set aside, which we went through a pile of through those years, and recovered. And then it grew back again. And now we've been kind of, I'll call it flatlined. I mean, it's good, but it's not growing. And I don't foresee anything that's going to change that in the foreseeable future, unless we have another COVID or something. I hope to God not. So I would say just steady with it. We're trying to hold in that 5-6% growth. But again, if people don't call us, it's like, okay, how do you go out and sell a well? If people don't need a well, they don't need a well.
I think one of the things with the ESOP that hopefully when the communities start realizing that it's partially employee owned, they'll understand that money really is staying in their community with their neighbors. And it's not just coming to some corporation. It's really staying with their neighbors and their families and the investment that we're making in that community. And that, as opposed to going to a competitor, will draw them more to us so that they will support the company and support the co-owners who are the employees.
Right. And that speaks to staying within your community. You know, you have a reputation for being community minded, um, represented in your community with your name, your brand name, and just how much pride you take in your community. Like so many drilling companies in our industry, but you have a unique um, history there that's begun since like what, the 81, Rod, from the
Yeah,
get-go.
81.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things too that, and I think everybody in the industry realizes, you don't find a lot of longevity in this industry. There's not that many companies that a customer can walk in and say, "Hey, you guys drilled my well back in 1982. Do you have that?" Oh yeah, we know how deep it is. We got the records. And of course, now you can go online to Ecology and stuff. But as far as the pump records, we know what it is. We've been there. We put it in. Blah blah blah. And I think that's worth a lot. And when you have these upstart companies, there's a lot of them that make it a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4 years, 5 years. There's not very many of them that are here 45 years. And typically, when you get a new company that starts out, be it whether it was one of your former employees or not, it doesn't matter. They know what everybody's charging in the industry, and their business model is to go out and be cheaper. That's how they get work. They go out there, and the only thing they know to do is, well, this guy's charging X number of dollars a foot, so I'm going to charge less. They don't know what it costs them. They don't look at that side of it. They just know I got to be cheaper, and that's what they do. Well, then their rig breaks down, and all of a sudden they got a $40,000 compressor or something. They don't have the money, and the next thing you know, they're gone. But in the meantime, you get the customers that are money conscious, which we all are on a budget, and they think, well, Joe's well drilling service is going to do it for, 20% less than you. So we've never been the cheapest. We've always given a very good product at a very good, fair, competitive price. But, if you're driven to be just want the cheapest guy out there, and I tell my customers that, I'm not your guy.
Yeah, that's well said. That's unfortunately a part of our industry is racing to the bottom,
Yeah.
Yeah.
more or less. Um, okay, so lastly, you've invested in your employees to help shape the future of the company and the industry. Um, like you said, happy employees, happy customers. It comes down to those two things. Um, Workforce development. How have you gone about training and retaining quality employees to have that one side of the equation, having good employees? Because that is, as you know, the number one concern uh, issue in our industry.
Yeah, and there's a lot to that too, and our daughter's done a really good job with that. We have good incentive programs for everybody. When they start at whatever level. We provide the training and the CEUs and what have you. And every time they move up the ladder, be it getting a CDL license or getting an apprentice driller's license or whatever, they get a pay motivation. They get an increase in pay. They get that kind of thing. So those money incentives, money talks, kind of thing. So a lot of that is with that. We've tried to do some apprenticeshiping with local schooling and stuff to offer them. Hey, we will get you a truck driver's license. We will get you this stuff if you will give us a few years of employment. And then we hope in those few years that you owe us for getting you these credentials, we're going to make you realize that you don't want to leave here, that you want to stay here and make this your career. And that's been fairly successful for us. We have found now that with this employee ownership and stuff, we've had a lot of phone calls coming in from competitors' employees saying, hey, are you hiring? And we don't actively like to go and try to steal people. So we don't usually do that. But if you have people come to you that says, I am leaving this guy and here's what I've got, and I think I want to come to work for you, obviously, yes, we'll listen to that. But like I say, we don't want to go and steal people. But that happens in this industry too, and it happens a lot. And again, it's a money thing. Well, you're making $35 an hour over there. I'll give you 38 to come to work for me. We try to build a desire. We try to put really good benefits for a small company to be able to supply, medical and all the stuff that's so expensive. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So we try to put all those pieces together and we do the best that we can with it. You can only afford so much. At the end of the day, we all know you have to make a buck. At the end of the day, you have to make a buck or you aren't going to be here.
Right.
We are in a rural community, Colville and Republic. And so some of the young people here, they don't always have a lot of options. Our counties are some of the poorer counties in the state of Washington. And so some of them just don't have a lot of options. And if we can bring them in and get them started in an industry, hopefully, like Rod said, they will understand and realize this is a great career to have. It's hard on the body. It's hard on the body when you go out there and work in the elements day after day. And, I don't work outside the office, so I don't really know, but I can tell, I'm getting stiff just sitting here. I need to be working. So, hopefully we are reaching some of those people to encourage them to investigate into the industry.
So who's running the cable tool rig? That's what.
Boy, all the rotary drillers, which that's what I am. I've been around the cable tool a little bit, but all of us just go, oh my God, I don't want to run that kind of thing. And we had a guy by the name of Jim Noonan who started when he was 16 and he worked for us until he was in his late 70s. And we've got some of our drillers that are capable of running the cable tool. And we frankly just use it for specialized jobs, which there is a time and place that a cable tool does do pretty well. But for day to go out and drill water wells, it's just so antiquated and so slow. It works. It does work. There's no question about that. But so we've got a couple of qualified guys, but that rig gets used the least of the ones in the fleet.
Well, can you leave us too now with just lasting thoughts on 45-year legacy, business legacy, the top business lessons learned that you'd like to share with us?
Well, unfortunately, one of the things is the day of the handshake that all of us drillers those days are behind us. You need to have contracts now. You need to have them well done. You need to protect yourself, but you also need to protect your customer. And I think that one of the big things I always say too is you want to treat people the way that you want to be treated, and you need to live with that. And I think that's what's helped us grow is that we're honest. We do what we say we're going to do. And there's a lot of times in this business, it's really tough because you don't get the water that you want. We've got some tough areas here that the wells are deep, very low producing. And, some customers, you're just paid by the foot. And, your guys just want to go deep and all that kind of thing, which is not true. And I've always said, if I ever had a driller out there that I know purposely went deeper than they needed to or sealed the water off with the casing to get to the bedrock when there was usable water, I would fire. That is not going to fly. We do not work that way. And when I hear that, somebody saying that about a competitor or whatever, I don't believe it in their case either. I don't think any of us are out there trying to do that. We want to get good water. We want a happy customer. We want them to build a dream home, and we want to part friends. So it's a tough industry, though. We all know that. Sometimes stuff goes wrong.
And I'd say don't take your eye off the finances. The receivables and the payables, don't take your eye. If you're the owner, don't take your eye off of that.
Don't sell yourself short either. Charge what we're worth.
Yeah.
This industry, you look at the credentials that these guys have out there. Don't be embarrassed to go out there and charge what we're worth. We are worth that. You guys are worth that. Get what you don't have to rape your customer. Be fair, but the Sears repairman pulls up in an old van or Joe's Plumber, and they're getting $150 an hour or whatever. Most of them don't have any licenses or anything. We all know now a new pump truck, you're spending $250,000 on a pump truck. You put 2 licensed guys on that truck. What is that worth? You take $1 million drill rig out there, so.
And a lot of times the customer just sees one thing and they don't take into account all of the things that it takes to get that drill rig or that pump truck out there. The commercial insurance, the fuel and the labor and all the employee benefits and the training, all those things that follow that piece of equipment out to the job site. It's not just those 2 employees and that piece of equipment. There's a whole big balloon of stuff that follows them around.
Rod and Sue, congrats on the achievement of the ESOP.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Enjoyed it.
All the best.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Thanks for watching and listening to the WWJ Industry Connected Podcast. We'll be back next month with a brand new episode, so be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the major platforms, so it'll be easy to find us. And visit wateroiljournal.com for the latest expert columns, feature articles, videos, and news covering the groundwater industry. So one more time for Rod, Sue, and I, thank you for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.